Zoro has taken down Hachi, Sanji has taken down Karubi, and Usopp has taken down Chu. The only fishman that remains is Arlong, and today, we will see if Luffy can finally bring an end to his reign of terror. But before we do, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend, and join the Discord down below. And now, let's jump into One Piece Volume 11, The Meanest Man in the East, featuring chapters 91 to 99. Part 1, Luffy vs. Arlong. This will cover chapters 91 to 94. Since this was alluded to in the last volume, the start of this volume deals with the big confrontation that we've been waiting for. Luffy versus Arlong. I do want to start off by saying that it is evident how much thought Oda put into the design and powers of the fishman. Arlong isn't just another typical powerhouse villain like in most shows or books. He has unique gimmicks that make him a worthy opponent. Some of these gimmicks include the ability for his teeth to get stronger every time they're broken, being able to increase his strength and stealth in the water, using his nose as a spear, and finally, whipping out his shark saw. Now, for the most part, Luffy is actually able to withstand the onslaught of attacks by Arlong. He's actually shown to be quite intelligent when it comes to battle strategy and fighting. In this regard, Luffy sort of has that Goku brain of sorts, meaning that he is relatively uneducated when it comes to typical things, but he is a master strategist in battle. Something that enrages Arlong, leading to the scuffle between the two spilling over into Nami's old map-making room. This is when the best scene of the entire scuffle plays out, as we see Luffy realize what Arlong has done to Nami. He used her dream and made her a slave, forcing her to remain with him out of fear for her family and her village. Nami was never free to do what she wanted. She always had chains that shackled her down, some physically and some mentally. This is also when we see how twisted Arlong's worldview is, and how much it contrasts with Luffy. Arlong sees Nami as a good human, and one of the only ones that he actually has respect for, all based on her abilities and map-making skills. Despite the inhumane treatment of Nami, despite all the pain and suffering he caused the people of Koko Village, he still calls Nami his crewmate. Not because he cares about Nami as a person or even as a friend, only because her value comes directly from what she is able to provide to him. A concept that is the polar opposite of Luffy. I think this scene should also make us appreciate Luffy more as a captain, as it reminded me that Luffy does not value what your talents are, but rather he values who you are and what your dream is. This is highlighted by all of the members who have joined the crew so far. Luffy asked Zoro to join his crew before seeing him even brandish a single sword, all because he saw how Zoro treated the young girl. He took a liking to Usopp because of his relationship with Kaya, not because of his sniping skills. He asked Sanji to be his cook before ever tasting his food, all because of how he treated Gin. And like with the others, he always wanted Nami to join his crew based on the relationship they formed all the way back in Orange Town. Luffy values the person you are, not the abilities you have. This leads to Luffy destroying Arlong Park, wrecking all of Nami's work and Arlong's empire, like the fishman did to Gosa. And as Arlong attempts one final attack on Luffy, Luffy breaks his nose and unleashes a powerful Gum Gum battle axe, defeating Arlong and absolutely destroying Arlong Park. As the dust settles, Luffy emerges from the rubble, and the first words out of his mouth are directed at Nami, telling her that she is his friend and she is on their crew. And while we do get to see a satisfying panel of Nami beating Captain Nezumi, the real powerful panel comes as Nami sits in front of Bellemere's grave, and as she talks with Genzo and Nojiko, Nami confirms what we all knew. Nami is now our navigator. Part 2, Luffy's Wanted Poster. This will cover chapters 95 to 96. The first part of this volume deals with the celebration of Koko Village, a multi-day celebration following the defeat of Arlong. I think it's fantastic that we see Luffy celebrating with the townspeople. As we know, if you share food with Luffy, you automatically become his friend. Along with this, we see Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp celebrating in their own unique way. But more importantly, we see Nami getting a new tattoo. This is probably the most symbolic section of the story, as we see Nami talking about the scar that the old Arlong tattoo will leave on her body, something that will never be healed. Nami is of course getting a new tattoo as a reminder of her village and Bellemere, and this is symbolic of her new journey. Arlong left a scar on her life that will never be healed, whether it be through the killing of Bellamy or the chains he placed around her, but the scar led to a new beginning for Nami, allowing her to meet Luffy, who eventually saved her and the remainder of her village. While Nami has a new path before her, she'll always be reminded of her past, but the chains placed on her have been lifted, and we watch as Nami says goodbye to the villagers, in her own special way of course, as she departs with her newfound family. I also want to point out that a small detail I forgot to mention was Genzo's pinwheel he kept on his hat. It is an admittedly weird fashion choice, but one that Luffy found time to keep bringing up every time he found Genzo. As Nami departs Koko Village, we are made aware that Genzo's pinwheel was used to make Nami laugh when she was a baby, the first sign of friendship between Genzo and Nami. And now that Nami is gone, the pinwheel sits atop Bellamy's grave, and waves in the wind as it watches the Going Merry sail away. Brilliant imagery, and an incredibly emotional farewell to a fantastic arc. This is when things take an interesting turn, as Luffy is revealed to have finally had a bounty placed on his head. And it's not just any bounty, but the highest bounty in the East Blue. Larger than Buggy, Alvida, Krieg, or Arlong. Outside of giving us a really cool look at Shanks and Mihawk interacting, along with the other characters that we have met along the way reacting to the news, this sets a sense of tension for the remainder of the story. Luffy is a wanted man, and Nami explains how this will lead to the crew encountering more bounty hunters and dangerous individuals as they enter the Grand Line. This does not seem to bother Luffy much though, and the others seem to revel in the opportunity to spar with more powerful foes, much to the chagrin of Nami and Usopp, but it does let the reader know that we can expect more powerful foes in the future, as this bounty will directly lead Luffy into conflict with powerhouses of the sea. But as all this is going down, we watch as the crew arrive at Logue Town. My manga called it Rogue Town, but we're gonna stick with Logue Town, the place where Gold Roger was executed, and the final stop on the journey before we enter the Grand Line. Part 3, Logue Town. This will cover chapters 97 to 99. This final part of the volume sees all of the crew have something to do, such as Nami shopping for clothes, Sanji gathering food for the trip, and Usopp gathering new items he can use as weapons. The three things I want to highlight before we end off, however, is Zoro getting his new swords, the return of Buggy and Alvida, and finally, the introduction of Captain Smoker. Starting off with Zoro, we finally see him getting 3 swords once again, but not before Oda does something I think is brilliant. He watches it as revealed by a woman named Tashigi, who just so happens to remind Zoro of Kuina, that Kuina's old sword is incredibly valuable, as it is the Wano Ichimonji, a sword that is worth millions and is incredibly rare. Not only does this raise questions about how Kuina obtained such a sword, but also allows us as an audience to actually care about what weapons Zoro uses. Consider how many heroes or villains you see wield swords in video games or movies you watch. Now I want you to consider how many of those swords actually stand out in your mind. For me, it's Link's Master Sword, Cloud's Buster Sword, and Black Knight's Ebony Blade. Giving the swords this much backstory and history causes us as an audience to care about the small, intricate details Oda has placed in his story, something I certainly would not have even paid attention to otherwise. Zoro leaves the sword shop with 2 new blades, the Demon Curse Kaitetsu 3 and Yubashiri, and as he does, we are greeted with the return of Captain Buggy and Alvida. Now, regardless of your thoughts on Alvida's new Devil Fruit ability, the interaction between her and Luffy is the funniest in the volume. Luffy not recognizing Alvida, and Alvida thinking the biggest change in her appearance is based on her losing her freckles is just hilarious. This is when Buggy attempts to execute Luffy on the same platform where Gold Roger was killed back in Volume 1. Buggy is, as you might imagine, salty about how things played out in Orange Town and is here to take revenge. And honestly, Luffy gets close to being killed, but not before shouting that he will be the king of the pirates and shooting a smile as Buggy prepares to behead him. And while Luffy is saved by a lightning blast that destroys the platform and knocks out Buggy, Luffy's smile was enough to worry the mighty White Chase Smoker. Now, for complete transparency, Smoker is easily one of my favorite characters in early One Piece, as he presents us with some new abilities that we'll be discussing next time, and his design is just overall incredible. I think it's important to note that Smoker was present at the execution of Gold Roger, and when Luffy shot a smile before he was going to be executed, that reminded Smoker of Roger, worrying him and leading to the Marines attempting to stop the chaos. meaning that as Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy make their mad dash out of Log Town, they will not be able to leave before encountering Captain Smoker in the next volume. But that does it for this episode. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, join the Discord, and share this video with a friend, and stay tuned for Volume 12 releasing Friday. But until then, take care.